Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband. Today we are talking about Psalms 6, 8, 9, 10, 14, 16, 19, and 21. Tomorrow we're jumping around a little bit. It's going to be 1 Chronicles chapter 1 and 2. Remember, we're reading the Bible in chronological order, not in order that it is in the Bible itself. So that's why the next few days we're going to be skipping around a lot. So get ready and buckle up for another episode. So here we go. Right off the bat, chapter 6. The title in the CSB is A Prayer for Mercy, and it says here, for the choir director with stringed instruments, according to Sheminith, a psalm of David. Now in the King James Version it says, a prayer of faith in time of distress. So the focus of times of distress versus the focus on praying for mercy. Mercy is typically insinuates that you're going through some distress. Now the word Sheminith is difficult to interpret here. The most commonly proposed root meaning is 8, leading some to identify it with an 8-stringed instrument or an octave, like the King James Bible did, or an 8-note scale. In any case, it is part of the musical instruments and the musical instructions for this psalm. Now we're going to mosey on to Psalm 8. Psalm 8's title in the CSB says, God's Glory, Human Dignity. Versus King James title of The Glory of the Lord in Creation. Now it says here, on the instrument of Gath. Now what is the instrument of Gath? In the CSB it says, on the Gittith. On the Gittith. Now, some propose that a gittith is some kind of musical instrument or an instrument that was common in the area of Gath, and some compare it to a lyre. And the LXX translates it for the wine press, relating it to a Hebrew root for grapes. In this sense, it could have actually been a song to be sung during the grape harvest, possibly. But this is a hymn of praise, and more specifically identified as a creation hymn, which is one of the reasons why I put a picture of the earth here as one of those signs of creation. Now then, Psalm 9, celebration of God's justice, versus King James says, prayer and thanksgiving for the Lord's righteous judgments. So justice and righteous judgments. Now it says, according to Muth-Laban, a psalm of David in the CSB. In the King James it says, to the tune of Death of the Son, a psalm of David. Wow. So does Muth-Laban mean death of the son? Let's see. The Hebrew word Muth-Laban could be related to Alamoth, which appears in the title of Psalm 46. It could be translated as for the death of a son, in the sense of being used for that occasion. More likely, it identifies a specific tune or style of music, though. Psalm 10 does not have a title and is joined to this psalm in the LXX and the Vulgate both. Another reason for seeing Psalm 9 and 10 as one psalm is that there is an alphabetic acrostic that begins in Psalm 9 and is continued in Psalm 10. However, there are significant changes that take place, especially in terms of mood in the form. For instance, Psalm 9 focuses on thanksgiving, whereas Psalm 10 takes the form of a lament psalm. This seems to argue for them being two distinct psalms, and both the CSB and King James have a title for Psalm 10, and they keep them separate. The CSB says a need for God's justice, of course, and Psalm 10, the King James, is a song of confidence in God's triumph over evil. Very interesting. A triumph over evil. How about that? So then we're going to move on to 14. Psalm 14. Got to flip some pages for that one. A Portrait of Sinners is the title of Psalm 14 in the CSB. And the title for it here is in the King James is Folly of the Godless and God's Final Triumph. Interesting differences there. Psalm 16, the hope of the faithful and the Messiah's victory. The Messiah's victory. Interesting. When I read through this, Well, I'll just leave this to you. When you read through this, what images of the Messiah's victory do you get out of Psalm 16? And Psalm 16 in the CSB titled, Confidence in the Lord. Now we're going to move to Psalm 19. Psalm 19 was deep for me. I got a lot out of Psalm 19. The title in the CSB was The Witness of Creation in Scripture. And the first verse here says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the expanse proclaims the work of his hands. Wow. And then here we have Psalm 19 in the King James Version is titled The Perfect Revelation of the Lord. And the first verse here says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Very nice, very nice. Now when I think of all this, I think of the earth, I think of creation, I think of the firmament when God created, and then I think of looking down at the earth from outer space when I think about this. And when I think about looking down at the earth from outer space, I think about John Glenn. Now between 1957 and 1975, the competition of space exploration between the Soviet Union and the United States became a heated part of the Cold War, both because of its potential military and technological applications and its moral boosting social benefits. The Soviets were the first to achieve a manned orbit of the Earth in 1961, and that put America behind in the so-called space race as it was. On February the 20th, 1962, though, atop of an Atlas rocket, Colonel John Glenn piloted the first American manned orbital mission aboard Friendship 7, circling the globe 3 times, fulfilling America's political and scientific hopes and dreams as declared by President John F. Kennedy. Glenn returned to Earth as virtually everybody's American hero. Everybody just loved him for it. From 1974 to 1999, John Glenn served as a United States Senator. Now, in 1998, NASA invited him to rejoin the space program as a member of the Space Shuttle Discovery crew. On October 29, 1998, Glenn became the oldest human at the age of 77 ever to venture into space. It was a vivid reminder of the heroic spirit that makes space exploration possible. As Glenn observed the heavens and the earth from the windows of Discovery, he said, to look out at this kind of creation out here and not believe in God is to me impossible. It just strengthens my faith. I wish there were words to describe what it is like. Wow. Now, I move on in Psalm 19 to verse 13 here. It says, moreover, keep your servant from willful sins. Do not let them rule me. Then I will be blameless and cleansed from blatant rebellion. So the words willful sins and blatant rebellion stick out like a sore thumb to me. That's because I think about the definition of sin as being missing the mark. And the aspect of sin and missing the mark is missing the mark of God's standards set for humanity. This missing of the mark is not a simple mistake, but a falling short of God's glory through conscious choosing of sin. Now, we may refer to sin as a failure on the part of humans to live according to God's standards, but we must recognize that this failure is intentional on our part. We miss the mark when we deliberately choose to cast aside God's intentions for us. So sin, most of the time, is a choice. We choose to sin. Now, chapter 21, Psalm 21 in the CSB is titled The King's Victory, and Psalm 21 in the King James is Joy in the Salvation of the Lord. So a king's victory versus salvation. They took a little different focus there. King James focused on the salvation, and 21 focused on the king's victory. Well, that's it for today, and the Bible in 1 Year with the Preacher's Husband is concluded for one more time. I guess tomorrow I will see you then for 1 Chronicles 1 and 2. If this has touched you, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and of course click the little jingle bell so you can get notified the next time I upload a video, which will be tomorrow. We'll see you then.